A while ago, my wife suggested that a bread bin might be a great complementary product to put on our website to go along with the chopping boards that I make. And I thought that sounded like a great idea. But if I make a bread bin, then I'm going to make one that's got a tambour lid on it, which meant I really need to come up with a way that would allow me to make them as efficiently as possible. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I made the jig and how you can make the jig that will allow you to make these tambour lid bread bins with minimal fuss in a very short period of time. So first job is to cut this base frame, and the purpose of this is to hold both the workpiece and the template in place while you write it out. I've got a piece of 18mm ply, 380mm wide by about 380mm tall, and I've used 40mm strips of ply to create the outside of the frame. Now when I made mine, I put a piece of masking tape on each end of the workpiece, and then I screwed the right hand side and the base piece in, and then dropped the workpiece in there, and then brought this side up just nice and snug to the end. And that little bit of masking tape will give us just enough room to be able to take that workpiece in and out nicely without it snagging and catching. So the first jig I'm going to make is to rate the channels for the breadboard top, back and base to sit into. And in order to do that, I want another piece of ply, approximately 300mm square. Doesn't matter if it's a little bit under, because I want to cut it short by the width, the diameter of my router guide bush. Now mine's 17mm, so if you're following me exactly, this template width needs to be 300 minus the 17mm. The next cut we're going to make is to allow for the top panel of the bread bin. And once again, this needs to be exactly the same width or diameter as your router guide bush. Now this cut is a stopped cut. We need to make sure we only allow enough to allow the top panel to sit in. So mine stops 137mm back from this right hand edge. Then the last cut for this template is to cut out a piece here to allow the router to cut the channel for the base. Now again, this needs a stop on it, and for my router I need to stop at 22mm in, and the piece I'm going to take out is 21mm in from the edge. And that's our first template complete. So we can now place our router route along for the bottom board, across the back for the back board, and then across the top for the top board. This second template's a little more complicated, so I've drawn it out already and I'll walk you through it. That way you haven't got to listen to me fumbling the math. And if you need to, you can pause the video, or you could be a real pal and help me out on the channel and buy the plans. So this line is 15mm up from the bottom of the template piece. This line's 30mm in. This line's 28mm down from the top. This line's 15mm up from the bottom. This line is again 28mm in from the front. Now for the curve, mark a point 140mm down and 140mm in, and then set your compass to 112mm, and then you can draw an arc that intersects with both that front upright at the bottom and the top channel for the tambour lid to roll through. Now this bit here we're going to put a 30mm round over on after we've cut these lines. Now as far as cutting's concerned, use any method that you feel comfortable with. Circular saw, jigsaw, bandsaw, coping saw, whatever you like, and clean it up afterwards with some sandpaper. That's our 2 template pieces cut. And the last thing we need to worry about is the front edge. Now this front edge, we merely need to cut an arc on it that will duplicate the arc that the tambour lid runs in. So I've cut another piece of waste. Doesn't have to be 18mm, mine's 12mm in this case, but anything you've got to hand. And this is 298mm long by 198mm tall. And this will line up with, again, the bottom right hand edge, the back edge. We can't use the base assembly because we're going to be cutting around on that very front edge, and that will cut into this left hand border. So the important measurements you need: 298 long, 198 tall, and then the point for the compass mark is 160mm in from the back and 60mm up from the bottom, and then your compass setting will be 138, and that allows again for using that very same guide bush. So mark the arc, cut that again in whichever way you prefer, and then get that nice and smooth with the sander, which means we're now ready to start making the bread bin. So we're going to start with a panel template. Take one of your side pieces, drop it into your frame, your base frame, and then drop your panel template on, making sure both are nice and tight to the bottom right hand corner, and clamp in place. Now I've got these Craig rail clamps, which are fantastic because I can hold everything in place with one clamp, and it's not going to move and it's not going to get in my way. So for these panels, we're sinking these in 10mm. So drop your router down to the base of your side piece, zero your guide, and then set that to 10mm, lock it off. Now be really careful on this piece because you've got the ability to tip the router and gouge out into the inside of the bread bin. And that's our panel cuts done. And now for the tambour lid. So back to piece 1, and we want to rotate it 180 degrees, and then we want to take our tambour lid template, and as a visual check we want to make sure that that round is on this open piece here. So there's the top, there's the back, base underneath, and this time we want to reset our router depth of cut to 6mm. And similar to the panel template, we're going to take the tambour lid template out and flip it 180. Take piece number 1 out, piece number 2, rotate, drop that in, bottom left hand corner. For the tambour lid, you're going to need 14 pieces, 15mm wide by 7mm thick, and then one additional piece at 20mm wide by 7mm thick again to take the handle. So to assemble the tambour lid, it doesn't constitute being called a jig. It's a piece of MDF with a bit of ply screwed in on the bottom and another piece of ply at a right angle on the left hand side, so that I can push all the pieces up, and then I use a little bit of waste to just keep them in place while I glue the canvas on the back. But before I flip them all over, I'm just going to take a moment to see if I can orientate them in the most attractive way possible. I think that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to flip them all over. Now I'm just going to trap them in place with this bit of spare. Now for the canvas, I don't really want to come any closer than about there on the bottom and about halfway through the top rail. The sides really important. I like to leave the sides a good 20 mil short, so that I don't get any chance of fouling. I got some white adhesive here that's non-toxic, safe for use. And just make sure this is really pushed into the glue everywhere. There. Now we'll set that aside to dry. So onto the panels. All the panels are 400mm long. The top panel is 160mm wide. The back panel is 170mm wide. And the base is 390mm. The back panel sits inside the top and the bottom, so the top and the bottom are both going to need notching to cover these router curves. I've already cut the recesses on each corner to save time on the video. I've cut 10mm in from each end on both the bottom and the top panels. The back is inset in between the top and the bottom, so it doesn't need any cutting at all. And the insets at the front and the back. At the front you need 24mm, and at the back you need 13mm on each side, obviously. And for the top, 14mm at the back and 10mm at the front, again on each side. So I pop the base in first, and then finally the top. So at this point I'm ready to give it a good sanding all over, so I'm going to go all over it with 180 grit, and then I'm going to give it a damping, and then I'll go over it again with another 180 grit. After that I need to put some roundovers on, so I'm going to put a roundover on the bottom front and the top front, and I'm going to put a roundover on the bottom of the top and the top of the top at the front, and then at the back I want to round over here at the top edge and at the bottom edge there. So while I'm waiting for that damping to dry, I'm going to route the round on the very front of my side panels. I'm just going to drop that on the top and align it with the bottom right hand corner on this side, and on the other piece the bottom left hand corner. So flush at the back, flush at the bottom, and I'm using the same router bit and the same guide bush, but I'm now going through 18mm. So I'm going to reset my guide, my depth stop rather. So dry assembly, basing first. Looks better. So my last job then is to pop a little handle on here, and then I can move to glue up. Now for the handle, I've taken a piece of waste out of the scrap bin. It's 21mm by about 16mm across. I've put a round over on the top, and I'm just putting a little finger hold here on the top and the bottom with a 1/2 inch bullnose bit. So just prior to glue off, I've got a little solution here of beeswax suspended in mineral oil, and I'm just going to wax this slot that the tambour lid runs in while I can still get to it all. I really want to try and get just the right amount of glue in, so I haven't got any squeeze out to try and clean up. Test the lid. I'm using the same mineral oil and beeswax solution to finish the rest of the bread box as I used on the tambour lid groove. It's food safe, quick to apply, quick to really reapply, and brings out the grain beautifully. So I'm going to do the white panels first, so they're sealed before I start touching the dark wood, just in case there's any transfer onto the cloth. Make sure I get into the grooves, and also make sure there's not a build up. Now just to wipe over with a clean rag to make sure I haven't got any excess anywhere. And that, as they say, is a wrap. As with any project made out of timber, the species that you choose can really make or break the project. And from that perspective, I think this is absolutely beautiful. I'm chuffed to bits with it. The contrast between the dark of the utility and the light of the ash, I think, is gorgeous. And then add to that the grain pattern that you can see in the ash, beautiful. But this was more about the process and how efficient I could make the process of creating a tambour lid bread bin that I want to sell on my website, and I'll put a link to that below. So the template guys have made the whole process really simple. All the work goes into the template, obviously, so that this becomes a real walk in the park. In fact, I think the most difficult part of this build now is getting the panels prepared and ready to make the bread bin with. So I'm chuffed to bits with the templates and the whole process itself. So all the detail that you need to make them is contained within the video. However, if you'd really like to help support the channel and help me in my endeavors on YouTube, then you could pop across to my Etsy page and you'll be able to buy the complete set of plans with all of the instructions that you need in a digital download. And I'd be really grateful if you'd consider doing that. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you really enjoyed the video, then consider subscribing. And if you absolutely loved it, then pop over to my Patreon page and have a look at what I've got to offer there. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time. Ta-ra.